Pevsner, Nikolai Pevsner, who went round looking at England and all the different buildings and wrote a whole series of books and was quite scathing about a number of them, said of Lyminster, when I was here, that it was more a collection of old cottages behind flint walls before the 20th century, and it's pretty much what it still is today. I've come to Liminster today because I wanted to have a look at the church, and I wanted to have a look at the legend of the Knucker Hole, and we're going to go and have a look and see if we can find where the Knucker Hole is. In fact, it is actually just opposite me, but we'll have a look at that a little bit later. This is St Mary Magdalene's in Lyminster, just north of Littlehampton in West Sussex. It's a fascinating church, a beautiful church. I've done a walk here before in which I took a stroll from the starting point over to Poling, which is, I guess, about 1.5 miles, up to 2 miles, I suppose, in an eastward direction. That was one of my church-to-church walks, and if I remember, I'll put a link to it. It's a beautiful church here. It's a very quiet day in August, overcast at the moment, but it may well heat up. We came here, lovely Julia and I and her kids, only the other day actually, and went in, and I thought, got to come back and do a video about it. When I came in, the church must have been the darkest church that I've ever been in. It's a Saxon church originally and was part of a Benedictine nunnery, which is over where the farm is on the, I guess if that's the east, on the south side. And so nuns were part of this church originally, Benedictine nuns. And so this south wall with these amazing small windows are originally Saxon, and what is very typically Sussex apparently is the Saxon archways, very tall, and the very tall roof. Of course, like all churches, it's had various modifications over time, but what fascinates me is all the timber inside the church. I'm not talking about the pews, I'm talking about the timber framing and the timber exposed roof. And you can't see it, but when we came in before, the tower seemed to have these great big timber struts. So I don't know whether there was originally a timber tower, but apparently it dates back, I think, to the 13th century or the 14th century, the tower. Of course, it's got a north aisle here, which we can see the arches that go through. That would have been a later addition. But what a splendid and amazing church. So this was a minster, we were told when we came here before, which is an important place. Of course, now it's, as Pevsner says, it's just a collection of houses, flint houses. Quite important though, because there's a number of large estates, it seems to be, in the area. But you drive through it from Arundel as it were, just sort of to the east of Arundel down to Littlehampton, and blink. You wouldn't know that this was here unless you knew it was here. It is interesting, I think, how the powers, if you can call it that, or the places of importance have changed over the centuries as populations move for different reasons to different areas. But I've really come to see if I can find out a bit more about the legend of the dragon and the Knuckler Hole. And I believe that there is a panel over here. Now, when I came before, there was a lady, she lit it up. So I'm going to see if we can turn the light on and see the picture of the legend, and then I can tell you about it. And here it is, isn't it brilliant? This dedicated panel here lit up to demonstrate and tell the story, very much in the old church tradition of using pictures to tell people about the biblical stories, which would have had in the old days murals on the walls, because people, of course, were illiterate and they couldn't read. And so this is fantastic. It's got heralding symbols, it's got the dragon, it's got all you need, all the elements of the storytelling. So what is the story? That's the question. Well, just a stone's throw, and I'll go and point it out. You can't get to it because it's surrounded by a hedge and a fence, and it's on private property, is what was known as the Knucker Hole, a bottomless pit of water. Water that will never apparently dry up, so the legend had it. And as far as I understand, in the Knucker Hole was a dragon, depicted here as a red dragon, that presumably was causing chaos and mayhem in the village, in the Minster, in the area, and was presumably eating fair maidens and terrorising the people. And one day a young man thought he had the answer. People had tried to slay it, possibly with their swords and things, and failed. He thought the best thing to do was to poison it. So he went about poisoning it by getting a pie, poisoned the pie, and fed it or left it for the dragon to eat. And the dragon did indeed eat it, and the dragon did indeed die from the poisoning. To celebrate the death, the young lad, who was, of course, cheered by all the villagers, was taken to the Six Bells pub, which is still here and just down the road. But apparently they had a feast, and whilst they were having a feast, he ate. But what he hadn't realised is that some of the poison from the pie that he'd put in was still on his hands. And alas, the young lad who had slayed the dragon, he himself also died. And he was buried, presumably, somewhere in the churchyard. I don't know exactly where, except that there's a stone just to my right, which allegedly is the Dragon Slayer's stone, part of the upper part of the coffin. It's said, whether it's true or not, nobody really knows, I suppose, is the tomb of the Slayer. We'll have a look at it. Don't worry, I turned all the lights off. Obviously, when you come into a church, if you put the lights on, do turn them off, because it does cost a little bit. They always have a collection box, so stick a couple of quid in there and that helps pay for the electricity. So now I'm going to go down and see if we can point out where the Knuckler Hole is, because it is a stone's throw from the churchyard. Actually, as I walk along, it is quite a large churchyard here, actually, for such a small gathering of houses. Presumably they date back, I guess, to probably the 17th century. Fewer ones you get before that. But there's some very ornate and more modern graves, as well as the older ones here. There's cows in this field. Beautiful brown cows. I don't know what type of variety they are. But just up where they're going is the Knuckler Hole. You can't get to it, as I said before, it's fenced off sadly. But where those trees are, inside there, I've never been in, I wish I had, is the site of the Knuckler Hole. I believe it's private fishing now. It's a pool. But it's interesting, that must have been there for hundreds of years, from which this legend has arisen and become associated with the church and the Six Bells pub down the road. And beyond, you've got these very flat plains. The other side of this, you can't see it from here, but you would, I think, be able to see the skyline of Arundel Castle, and the is it the cathedral there? And then you've got the farmland here, which is just very, very flat. Fascinating, interesting place. Just had a quick look round at the some of the farm buildings here adjacent to the church. Looks like a lovely old farm, not very busy at the moment, but obviously we saw the cows earlier, so we know that they're there. Some beautiful old buildings like that green silo, whatever it is, container. A interesting old brick building. You don't see these on modern farms anymore, do you? That one behind me. Absolutely fantastic. So this is presumably where the Benedictine nunnery was, on this site, and no doubt the nuns must have worked the land, or at least had people to work the land for them. So it's fascinating, steeped in history. I don't know if there's anything of the masonry left of the old nunnery here, but definitely worth coming to have a little shufty around. Right, I think I'm going to make my way back to the van now and have myself a cup of coffee. Once again, it's nice to get back to the van, haul my amenities in here. I should make myself a cup of coffee here before heading back. It's not actually very far from where I live. But I've got a terrific view across the field, so I'm in no rush. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it, and join me again on the next one. Don't forget to follow, like, subscribe, give me a thumbs up, all the usual. Support what I do, and I'll continue to bring you heritage, landscape and nature, and you can follow my travels in my van as well. Till next time, bye-bye. Bye.